Welcome to the Bucky Report, guys. Today we're going to talk about who are the guys that are standing out so far in spring football. We give our top 5 list of guys that are performing right now. Two new commits in the last 2 days for the Luke Fickell football team, and we're going to dive into Greg Gard's haul in the portal. All that today, starting now.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
So what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining. Today we have the Nick Osen from Badger 247. Obviously, Rajeev left me here to my own devices in the state of Wisconsin while he goes off to London. So you get the less prepared guy. Rajeev is the adult in the room that is gone right now. So the kids are running the asylum. We're going to do some talking today, me and Nick, about what's going on in spring football. Who are the guys that are standing out early here? We have our top 5 lists. Obviously, I follow it really closely, all the different stuff that's been coming out from a report standpoint. I have my list. Nick has his. And we're going to dive into the 2 new commits that we had over the last couple of days here in Carmelo Reed and Carson Elam's. And then we'll dive into a little bit of basketball just to give you guys our thoughts on the haul so far and who we think they might need yet coming up for basketball. But yeah, first things first here, Nick. Thanks for joining.
Justin, absolutely, man. You know, it's been too long. Obviously, we've been chatting offline as we always do, keeping each other up on things, checking in. But I thought, yeah, I miss Rajeev, but I miss my guy, Justin. We got to get this going. And there's a lot to talk about. Like, truly, I'm never really hunting for, content. But recently, it's just been thrown in my face. There's been so much to write about. So good things ahead for sure.
There's been a lot going on, man. I don't think much needs to be said. It's a really interesting offseason for Wisconsin football. People are I don't know what your thought. There's people like us that are, I think, cautiously optimistic. And then there's a substantial portion, I feel like, that are just expecting failure at this point. Like, I don't love seeing it because I feel like people are being a little too negative at this point. But there were some things that needed to be worked out within the program, and I feel like they've made some of the changes that were necessary this offseason.
Well, Justin, there's no question it is an important offseason. I say that as somebody that believes every offseason is important, but not to be cliche, I think something needed to be done. And I think that, without getting in too deep, I love the move that Luke Fickell made with bringing on Jeff Grimes. I mean, I feel like within an hour or two of that hire, you and I were texting in the group chat like, we like this. We like this potential, the fit within Wisconsin, how Wisconsin can recruit, what we've seen most successfully. And, I'll just tee it up right now as we get a little bit deeper into spring ball. Like, so far, man, I'm not just seeing what I'm seeing with my own eyes, but talking to these recruits and just the feel of the program. Like, I literally spoke with a key target today, Evan Jacobson, and he said something like the feel and the energy is totally different from last season. I think that's notable right now.
Do you think that there's been kind of a weight lifted off the staff with the change to Grimes? Not to speak ill of Longo, but like, it clearly wasn't a fit. Like, things were not cohesive within that coaching group. I feel like the energy is just better between the.
What I've kind of said, and it's funny, I said this with you and with Rajeev and with Ryan before I even got my eyes at these practices. So this was probably January, February. I think Longo, with a lot of people, is a likable guy, and I think he has a phenomenal knowledge of football. But like you said, it wasn't a fit here, and now I think there's just more cohesiveness. I think it just makes more sense. It's more kind of appropriate for the personnel, I feel like. And so I guess in that sense, I think there's a better energy, but, it can be a little bit more focused on just who's here now, which is Jeff Grimes. I mean, the first time I heard him talking in our presser a couple of days after, it's like, okay, this is a Wisconsin type of guy, I think. When you put him,
that feel.
Yeah, with Luke Fickell, with Coach Blazek, with Coach G, now Jordan Reed, and so on. I think there's a lot of excitement, and it's a cool thing, Justin. I'm so grateful we get to be at these practices because you can see it. I mean, there's a reason the Badger football account has been tweeting some of these highlights. Like, we're not just making this stuff up. Is every day perfect? No. And honestly, it'd be a bad sign right now for the defense if the offense was just perfect every single day already, right? That's I've seen it in college, Wisconsin, Iowa State. I've seen it in Chicago Bears in the NFL. Like, you don't necessarily want that this early. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of good. And man, knowing you and how you love football, like, the offense looks pretty nice, cohesive, and comfortable. That's what I would say right now.
Yeah, I made the point in the Discord, and for anyone that's aware of it, Ryan's Discord for Locked On Badgers, that I felt like this was Grimes is a B plus offensive coordinator, but I said that I felt that he's an A fit for Wisconsin because I think that his skill set is played up by what they want to accomplish here in the level of buy-in. Wisconsin doesn't want to go out there and drop 45 points on a team. They want to – there's a combination there, and I know I've been really dismissive of ball control offense. That is not necessarily what Grimes does, but he does want to hold on to the football. But he is absolutely a guy who will take the quick score if it's there. Like, I think that he is a little bit of a killer. He'll take shots, but he's not afraid to chew on the clock for 6 minutes to get the drive done. And that's one of the things that I don't know how many other guys would be a total fit in that regard. Like, this is a guy that legitimately feels that it's important to run the football. And I think that the deepest part of his offense is off of that running game. Like, a lot of the passing game is predicated off of how that running game works and getting the defense to bite on things that are eye candy towards the run game.
Well, and Justin, I think that's really well said. And I'm excited to get into these standouts here too. But, I think that's really smart because, look, he's known for essentially, at least from my knowledge, I'm not, trying to predicate the scheme right now, but basically O-line guy in the past. You need to have a good run game. Tight ends more involved, but I love that you mentioned the deep shots because we haven't always seen those at Wisconsin. Like, obviously you've got to have the personnel, but man, again, the football count tweeted it today. Like, Edwards just had a gorgeous drop in the bucket. Basically, it was like a deep post, deep seam type of route to Tucker Ashcraft, who you may hear me talk about later. And it just looked so smooth. And I think the fit between Fickell and Grimes, but also Grimes and Billy Edwards, Justin, has been really, really good. I mean, I'm fortunate I got to talk to Billy, I think, a day or two after he committed, very early on, and got kind of that buzz going out there. But the way he's handling himself right now, his role in the offense, obviously getting guys fired up, buy-in, comfort, you name it. Like, we spoke with him today. That's an impressive young man, and I feel like he just fits with kind of that strong, focused confidence of a Fickell and Coach Grimes.
Excuse me. Yeah, one of the things I'll note is they dropped the second episode of the camp today, and it does focus a good bit on the quarterbacks and Billy Edwards, where they show kind of him, and he's a very mature kid. Like, you could tell he's been in college football for a while and kind of gets it, and kind of he's not overwhelmed by this change, you could tell. And I honestly think this offense is a pretty good fit for him. But without going too much more into this, let's dive into it because I know we got a lot to talk about. The things that we want to talk about. So, what Nick and I had discussed that we're going to do for you guys tonight is we want to go over who are 5 guys that have been standing out so far in camp. And to be clear on this, there's a disclaimer. This does not mean these are guys that are going to start in the fall. This does not mean these are guys who are going to be stars on the team. It's simply guys that have really shown development and stood out so far in spring football.
Justin, thank you for that disclaimer. You want to go popcorn?
There's so many guys that win spring and just never do anything in the fall. And I don't want people to get that because there are people that you and I think both think are having strong camps that will be guys that play a lot in the fall, but aren't necessarily standing out quite as much. Like Dupree, Jones, those are guys that are really they're getting their work in, but I don't know if we necessarily would say that they're standing out to a huge extent as of yet.
You want to start with one, or you want me to?
Yeah, you can lead it off. Go for it.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go with who I kind of teased, man, because the tight end position is my favorite in sports, or I should say in football. I wasn't big time or anything, but I played it at Wanakee. I always watch that position closely. It's a reason I've been excited for this hire. And obviously you can kind of see my lead in. Tucker Ashcraft, man, point blank, Justin, he looks like a different player. Some people, board members on our site, like yourself, that I would trust, really noticed just from the clips. He looks stronger, faster, more complete. I think that the potential's been there in blocking, but there's no question it looks better. And just as a reliable receiver right now for Billy Edwards and whoever's back there to go to, again, I think there have been 8 practices. I think I've been at 6, since the NCAA tournament. I probably could have put him as a standout for 5. He has been that good, Justin, truly.
Yeah, and one of the first ones here I'm gonna list off is a guy that somebody in the chat has already brought up, Jaden Ballard. Coming over from Ohio State, he's a guy who has really stood out. They've hit him consistently on deep shots. I think his speed and athleticism is something that we're not used to having in that receiver room. He's making a move. This is a guy, and I know we talked about with the disclaimers, he's a guy who legitimately could take the starting outside role. So, it's going to be him and Vinny. I think if the season were to start today, those would be the 2 guys that I would say are likely to be on the outside. He is a guy there's other bodies in there. I think we'd all agree there's a few other guys that are probably going to be there. Who knows what happens when Hampers gets back involved. But Ballard is absolutely standing out so far and showing off some of the things that, from a skill set standpoint, separate him from some of the other guys.
And see, I know my friend here. I knew you'd have him, so I did not mention him. Next one, I'll go defense, which we love, D-line. Maybe one of the least talked about at the time additions in the D-line room. Obviously, they really hit the portal hard. But, Justin, I bet you know who I'm going to say. He's looked like a Big Ten potential starter. And Coach Fickell's words about him, no, he didn't say he was going to start or anything, but kind of proved they think very highly of this young man. Charles Perkins. The transition has been seamless. He has a great motor, good leverage, powerful. Justin, really, really good player. Really good player.
He's one of those guys that I had on my board. I'm gonna move off of him because of that fact. But I'm gonna kind of go in the same direction. And Perkins is another guy that, there's been a lot of kind of some things standing out. I feel like they did a pretty good job of getting some quality in that room. Now, that doesn't mean that the defensive line is going to be world beaters by any means, but it does feel like there are bodies in there that they can use to be a solid unit. And I think that that's a big deal. This team, last year it was a train wreck. We saw what happened when we played teams that could actually run the football at a high level. They made us look stupid. And that can't happen again. And I feel like we're in a much better position. And I say that after today, when it sounds like the offensive line had their best day of the camp so far.
I'm glad you saw that in some areas, I guess, too, because I did feel like, I wrote about it. It was the D-line / secondary kind of got off to a good start, but O-line really had a good finish. So are you picking another D-line guy right now? Or?
I'm going Corey Walker.
Yeah.
Who I think is a guy that is going to start. I actually think that he has a chance to be a really good player for us. I know people won't talk about, they'll say he came from the MAC or whatever. He's got the frame and I think athleticism to be a plus starter. And that doesn't mean that he's going to be a guy that's going to rack up huge numbers. But what I think that when I look at him, I see a guy who I think is going to do a really good job of setting the edge. And I think he's going to be disruptive enough on the edge. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to mean a lot of sacks, but I think he's going to push the pocket around and force a quarterback to get uncomfortable.
He can set that edge too.
Mm-hmm.
He can contain, man. I do think he's got some pass rushing prowess. So, yeah, again, no name so far have surprised me. This one might surprise you a little bit, and maybe that's just because, we didn't get the chance to see as much out of this player last year. I'm going to go with a young tailback, Dylan Jones.
Yep.
I can't think of probably a better fit for this offense now. And that, includes just like really anybody out there, because I feel like with his strength, he's, as we've talked about, he can be a one cut and go, put the shoulder down, hits the hole hard. Like, he's impressed me, Justin. I mean, there's a reason he was a top, I think, 9, 10 back in 247 Sports in his class. But, like, he's looked really good. I think the whole tailback room. I mean, you know what I think about Cade Giacomelli. Darian Dupree had an amazing play Tuesday, so today when most people are listening. But Dylan Jones, I think he's taken that jump.
And you had Atuka on your list, too, as a guy who played well today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a really good fourth back. He's a guy that if you had to bump up to 3, you would have no problem with him being a guy to steal some rep.
I'm not saying at the Big Ten yet, but I think he could be a legitimate, certainly D1, maybe power conference starter right now. Like, just the way he runs off of people, too. Just glad you saw that. Atuka's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you on Dylan Jones, just to give my 2 cents on that. I think I legitimately, and I love Darian Dupree, I think that Jones will be the guy who ends up being the bell cow. I think you're going to use Dupree in a few different ways. It feels like it's going to be like a 15-10 kind of split in terms of carries. Like, Dylan's going to be the guy who's going to get the ball running between the tackles more. He just is. He fits the skill set better. Not that Darian can't do it, but he's a guy who's better at pressing the edge. And he's a guy who's going to be better in space being used in the passing game, potentially being, motioned out. And especially in this type of offense where maybe you put both of them in the backfield and you motion out Dupree and I try to isolate him on a linebacker. He's going to chew up a linebacker.
And Yak's going to get some touches too, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think they're going to go 3 deep. There's no doubt in my mind that will happen. I think Yak will be used because he's probably the strongest out of the 3. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being their short yardage guy this year.
Yeah.
And he's got some burst to him.
Yeah. It's a good room, man. It's a good room.
It is. I like the room. I actually think it's going to be a good year. And Doc in the chat here saying, "What's up, my guys? Good to see you, Doc." We might as well give the requisite Haywood, shout out. It sounds like he's been killing it in camp. He's not one of my 5, but I actually do think that he's going to be. I do think he's going to be a guy that. I feel this strongly that I think he's going to be a guy that shows up on postseason lists in the Big Ten. I don't know if that's going to be an honorable mention or whatever, but I think he's capable of being that good this year already. I do have a question for you before we get too much deeper in this. Who was guard today? Was it Mandel or was it Kadenko?
Generally, Emerson. Yep.
Emerson? I was going to say, I figured it was his day probably today. I know you said he was a little banged up.
Yeah.
Good to see him back out there again.
That
explains why the running game was so crisp today.
we do really like Mandel, man. Yeah. Did you hit a third?
I'm gonna hit my third right now. I'm gonna go up there real quick and probably like these are not in any specific order, so I'm throwing it out there right now. Eugene Hilton, like he probably could have been the first guy we mentioned. It sounds like he's way ahead of the curve for a wide receiver, especially at Wisconsin. I would not be shocked to see him in the 2 deep this year. He's been that impressive, it sounds like, so far. He's just a guy who just makes plays. Like I could see him being used in the slot. I could see him being put out wide. Either spot, I think that he's capable of being used that effectively in the offense. And he's just got a great skill set. And this is what happens when you have a dad who's played that position in the NFL. You have a guy who comes in who's just kind of got that second nature type feel to the position. And it sounds like he's well ahead of the curve for feel for the game.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to, I'm fortunate I got to go see him. God, Justin, I want to say 3 times at preps. Also, shout out to Coach Mills, great trainer that's done a lot of good work with Gene and Tayshaun Bardo as well. I'm going to hit 4 or 5 right now. And then I got a couple honorable mentions because I know we've got commits to talk about too. So I actually swear to you, I got my list right here. I had Kevin Haywood.
Okay.
I just feel like, we've known about his size and his potential. And, obviously the D-line has expectedly gotten better, but like at times he's really shown to be an anchor. And that is not easy to do so young in the Big Ten. And there's a reason that the O-line has looked so good. So I got him. And then this was tough. I'm going to go with the younger player for the standout. and then I'll just mention the older guy in the honorable mention. Two guys I've really enjoyed talking with over the years. Wisconsin's own Grant Dean, man.
Okay.
Nina's own.
Sounds like
Multiple
both young
interceptions.
safeties have really stood out so far. But yeah, Dean
One
has
that
been
he
really
would have had for a pick six. Like, I remember people, maybe he didn't have a ton of offers when Wisconsin got him and things like that. But, man, he's legit. He's gotten bigger, faster, stronger, makes plays. He's a dude, Justin. He's a dude.
Well, I made the comment in the Discord. I said, for all the crap that Grinch took being here as the safeties coach, it sounds like he hit on both his safeties this last cycle. Like both him and Emmerich sound like they're guys who are going to be future players at that position.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how high I'm on that class. So I think it's
absolutely. And then there's other guys that potentially could end up being in the safety room out of that group. Who is the one that's from New Jersey? I'm trying to think of him right now.
Sophomore or
he's true freshman.
24.
Remington Moss.
Was
he New Jersey or is he Maryland?
Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot where he was out of. It sounds like he's another guy that we haven't heard a ton about him yet, but he's a freshman. Like some of these guys, if you're popping already, it's just to be clear to people that don't follow this as ridiculously hardcore as you and I do. If you're popping as a true freshman right now, you're ahead of the curve. You're well ahead of the curve. Most of these guys, the expectation I would say is ideally you hope to hear something next year after your redshirt year. Worst case scenario by redshirt sophomore year.
Yeah.
If you're popping already as a true freshman, that means from a physical standpoint, you're probably a little bit of a freak. And it means you probably have a pretty good, either you're getting by on talent or you're just a guy who's really, really sharp and picks up coaching really well. We have some guys that are doing both of that.
I think that's really well said because, I mean, especially in my line of work, writing about recruiting, like everybody knows I'm people first. So I've never been one to put that type of pressure. Guys can become first-round picks if we're not talking about them yet. I mean, it's just been a couple weeks. But that said, I will go as far as saying I think this 25 class could be super, super legit. You hit on yours, and I just got a quick honorable mention.
Yeah, somebody actually mentioned him in the chat. Tackett Curtis is for me. For a guy who was much maligned last year, who was not healthy and really struggled, I think, because of it, it sounds like he's really starting to come on this year and starting to get comfortable. And that's a big deal. Like the level of athleticism that we have at the inside linebacker room this year is ridiculous. Between those two guys, you have two guys that are probably running 4.6s. And that's both of those guys can really run and cover ground, and they're both like to hit. So if you can get them locked in, and I think gut instinct here, when push comes to shove this season, I think we're going to use those guys in the pass rush game a lot more.
Without a doubt, I would think.
I think both of those guys have skill set that fits really well for it. They're light on their feet and can really move. I think they're guys that you want to do some things to mess with the offense a little bit.
Wow. So we threw our standouts, no repeats?
I think I have one more left. I'm trying to think. If I'm going to throw one more out there, let's see.
I can throw my honorable mention too, as you think.
You know what? I'm going to throw Mandela out there. It sounds like he's pushing for that position, which is a guy that I've been high on since we recruited him. And I know you were high on him really too. I felt, and I've said since day one that I thought he was a guy that could potentially be a first-round pick if everything comes together for him. I think he's that physically talented. Now, a lot has to go right. I'm just saying he's got that kind of upside.
No, but I'm laughing because we're saying the same thing, man.
Yeah.
I've been so high on him since I was at Iowa State. You're right, because it was one of those top schools. He's a worker. I think he's fit in really well here. So I'm in agreement. Just want to mention real quick. Athletic. No, dude, he's a dude. I want to mention real quick before we get into some younger guys, some commits, of course. So I was between these two safeties for my last standout. So just honorable mention, just because one thing I do pride myself on with those standouts you see every day, like sometimes the lists are kind of long, but I think anybody that is really showing up deserves it. if they're making those types of plays. So one of the most versatile players, maybe in the entire Big Ten. He could probably play 3-4 positions on defense, honestly. Austin Brown, just Mr. Reliable. I've loved what I've seen from that safety room. He's been legit. Similar, a veteran that even the head man, Coach Fickell, was just saying he's seeing a different version of right now this year. Rico Holman. So if he's taking a jump from being an All-American, watch out. And then Wisconsin's own Cooper Catalano. He's been already getting reps, which, as we know, that's very valuable this early. I think he looks quicker than I anticipated. He's already built like a third-year Big Ten linebacker. So, again, another really good ad.
It's good to hear that his speed is quick because, honestly, that was the one area where I wasn't sure how well he would project, especially with guys like Posa coming in. Because, I mean, he's just a whirling dervish out there. Posa's just all over the field. He can really run. Not that I thought that Catalano was a slouch. It's just that I felt like he was a guy that he reminded me more of who was the cat that started opposite of Chanel? I'm trying to think of his name wrong. I can't remember. His brother was on the team too at linebacker from Illinois. God, I can't think of his name right now. If you're in the chat, let me know.
Sanborn?
Yeah, Sanborn. Yeah. He reminded me athletically of Sanborn, which is not bad. Like, I feel like Sanborn took so much flack for his athleticism. And I'm like, he's more than athletic enough. Like, I never looked at him once while he was starting at Wisconsin and said, he's a guy you can take advantage of for his lack of ability. I actually thought he was better in space than Chanel. And that's what I kind of compared Catalano to. I thought he was a guy who
I wasn't here. Yeah, I wasn't here at that time for Jack, but from what I've seen, I watched a lot of Coop high school playing basketball. He might be a shade up in terms of athleticism.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's, and I do think he needs to get out ahead and run, because I think Posa's a guy that I wouldn't be shocked if he comes in and starts to push off the bat. Like, he's that physically gifted that with his instincts and everything that it wouldn't shock me to see him be a guy who sees the field earlier. He's kind of like Clayton in that regard, where I look at it and I'm like, these are two guys that if you want to just turn them loose in certain situations, I would be like, I trust your instincts and your athleticism. And you're in a situation where I don't think you can hurt us by being too aggressive. And every once in a while, if you're going to turn them loose as pass rushers, I think they can both do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think inside linebacker is quickly becoming a position that's getting kind of stacked, especially if we go to more of a 4-down lineman look. And I think, you tell me, does it seem like we're more of a 4-down now? It feels to me like the bodies in that room, that's kind of what it feels like.
There's enough rotating going on, different looks, multiplicities, where can't give you a clear answer right now. Okay. I'd say the personnel is lined up enough well to do so. But regardless, I'm going to say that ILB room is getting stacked because, like, I know there are a lot of fans on my board, too, of a guy like Janzi that, like, we still think he can ball out, but it's just the talent keeps stacking. Yep, he had a nice day. I think that was today. I talked about Catalano. You've got Posa coming in. Like, I think that talent is stacking up. I agree, my friend. How about the 26 guys, though?
All right, let's dive into this. All right, Monday night, Sunday night, huge pickup. Or was it? Yeah, it was Monday night. Never mind. My days of the week are all bleeding together. This is just in time. Carmelo Reed. I really like this kid. I did some looking back at what we've been bringing in the last couple cycles. Number one, the first thing I will say, I really like the size and athleticism that they're getting for edge guys. Mm-hmm. That room is getting stacked. Somebody's going to hit between Williams, Leteju, and Carmelo Reed. You are going to find somebody that's going to turn into a problem off the edge. Mm-hmm. They all have good quickness,
if not multiple,
really good power. Yeah, it could be multiple guys. But what you're getting there is you're really building some potential depth at that position. I love Williams as a guy who can move at that size. But one of the things I took away from this is it would not shock me to see Reed. I think he's going to be a guy that probably gets in that 280 range with a hand in the dirt, because I watch his high school film, he looks better to me with his hand down. Like he keeps his pad level better. He transitions his power, and he really comes up, staying kind of squat from that position. And
what's
really
he at? 6'7", 250, 255?
Yeah, 6'7", 250.
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be tough for him. Like when I see him standing up, unless you really sink your hips, and the only guy out of the group that I've seen that can do that really well is Williams. He really drops his hips well in like that Riger kind of way, where you look at him, he's really fluid and light on his feet. These other two guys aren't quite that light on their feet, but I look at it and I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. They can be used as a hand in the dirt pass rusher off the edge. Like, you're still effective. It's just maybe you're not going to be quite as fluid.
Yeah, really good ad, Justin, a good eval, quite honestly. I mean, that's not surprising, as we've talked about many times, but like legit offers. LSU, Missouri, I believe Ole Miss, a couple other Big Ten offers. Good eval from the staff. You know, I'm very high on recruiting Illinois. I mean, throughout the state, but like certain areas especially. He's coming from Olympia Fields. I think he's a high ceiling guy. I mean, I'm curious because I am of the mindset. I mean, he's being recruited at least as more the outside edge jack right now. I do believe he could maybe be playing at like 265, 270, but I think I would agree to get to his potential. It'll be intriguing. And if he gets to that 275, 280, keeps that athleticism, watch out. Watch out.
Absolutely. These are the type of guys that's been a really long time since Wisconsin's had them. Like we're talking Barry Alvarez, and it's kind of shocking how many of them we have, because I don't think Barry even had this many bodies. He would have a guy here or there that was a really high level guy, and you'd have some solid backups, but you wouldn't traditionally see a guy who's in that 6'5", 6'6" range with really good length and quickness. And that's something that we're kind of stacking right now. They clearly need reps, they need to be developed, but there's a lot to like in that room if you can keep these guys happy and satisfied with working their way towards being part of the answer.
Would help when you rotate often too. So
yeah, they're going to be able to get turned loose and just try to make plays. And then the other kid, we'll dive into him right away here, Carson Elam's. He's a guy who I looked at early on when I saw that we gave out the offer, trying to figure out who their board was, because he seemed like somebody that they were pretty actively targeting. And I wanted to see what the film looked like. And he reminds me a little bit of Washington from last cycle. He's not that physically developed. Washington was stronger. He was more physical. I see some of the similarities in terms of how quickly he drives on the ball and how well he moves in space in the secondary to Washington. I don't think either of them are like top shelf speed guys, but they're so athletic that I think there's a lot they can do.
My guy, it's not surprising because you're one of the few people that I really will hear and value your opinion on this film stuff. And I love hearing how you first said about how he can move in space, because I watched the film, I talked to our national, star Alan True, and I got a couple quotes from Carson himself, and fluidity in motion and being able to move with some versatility were all kind of things that he hit on. So that they hit on. So I love that point. I think that he can eventually be a playmaker. I think he's got a very high motor. I think he's solid in coverage. And again, this is a guy that, like you said, very, very much actively targeting, like Big Ten, SEC OBs on the list. But from what I understand, in addition to fit, I'd like to give a little shout out to the recruiting department, because they really went above and beyond in terms of really hitting on the academic side too. I had a great call with Carson over the weekend, just a visit recap, and real estate academics at Wisconsin really jumped out as well. And, I'm big in academics too. So I thought that was a really cool point to hear, and an impressive job kind of making that connection. A lot of Indiana kids, Justin, in this class right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting state. I'm very curious to see how we target it, because it's not exactly a state that's known for a ton of high-level recruits, but there is talent in that state. It's just because it's next to Ohio, it doesn't necessarily get the credit that it probably deserves. And Illinois, too, to be fair. It's between those two states, and they're both heavy talent producers. So it kind of
Ohio's
gets
insane
hidden a little
too.
bit. Yeah.
But I like it, man, and I think there's as True and I have written about, I think that they're kind of tapping into something a little bit there.
I think so. It will be interesting to see how Ohio goes. I think that's a state that doesn't it feel like we've kind of backed off that and really haven't attacked it that much?
Maybe not quite as heavily this cycle. I think that maybe there were some offers thrown and stuff, but yeah, then either big fish are coming in or looking at just different priorities elsewhere, things of that nature. But yeah, it's intriguing. But Indiana, Illinois for sure.
Well, tell Alan he needs to get this guy's rating up to where it belongs.
Elam's, what's he got? 86, 87?
He's 87, I think, with you guys. I think he's 80. He's a 5.6 on the other side, which is way too low to me. I think he's an upper 3-star guy. I'd probably personally have him at like an 88. I don't know if he's quite developed enough yet where I'd say he's a 4-star, but I think there's tools there. He's got a lot of potential.
87 for us, I think
it's close.
It's solid right now. Yeah.
We can live with that. The other site needs to get it up. He's not a low 3-star.
No.
Or even
not
a mid
with that
3-star.
offer list either. No.
No.
Reed's got the chance to move up, but I thought that was a very fair early rating from Allen.
88.
He's been all over Reed.
Absolutely.
Great stuff.
I think your ceiling for him is maybe a 91. I don't know if he gets to that, but you see a guy with that type of size, if he can clean up his technique going into his senior year, I think that not number one, his film will look a lot better, and I don't think the film was bad for junior year.
No, I agree.
Ceiling 91, he can look a lot more dominant if he cleans up some of his pad level stuff and things like that.
I'd maybe bet he does end up around that 89, 90. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, dude. I mean, like, this has been, I'm lacking a little bit on sleep. I need to kind of balance that going forward. But in terms of recruiting in hoops and football and visits, like, it's been a busy few days, man.
And it's the hard work's starting to pay off. Every once in a while you got to come in that Discord, man. I'm sitting there. I'm taking strays for the staff. They're like, people are like, oh, we're behind on recruits. I'm like, we're really not. It's April, man. You got to chill out.
No,
I'm like,
early.
if we're at the end of June, if we're not at like 10, then yeah, you can start to get uncomfortable, because then you need to start getting bodies in that class.
They will.
But we'll probably, like I said, I think we're still going to end up, we may pick up a couple more guys before the end of the month. And then, I mean, heck, we might have a quarterback sorted by the end of the month. Like, things are going to get really weird with that. If there's somebody that wants to commit to Wisconsin, there's 3 guys that are basically going to be pressured around each other to be, if you're serious about it, somebody making their jump, I think. I don't know who that is, to be clear. Everybody. It's just, this is the way things typically work out, is when there's multiple bodies kind of all circling the same offer. Typically, if somebody starts to show a little interest in it, things get a little squirrely, and somebody normally makes their jump because they don't want to lose it.
Well, we'll continue to keep you updated at Badger 247 as well. But real quick, did we want to touch on the hoops a little bit?
Absolutely. We got time left, man. Well, let's dive into this. So we've done a little talking about the transfer portal so far. It's been a really good start to the cycle for Gard. Number one, first thing I would say is they have resources, it appears. I don't know how much is left, but they're hitting on the targets of the guys they've gone after first. And I wouldn't say, I think that number one, I would say Boyd is probably their top of the board guy. Like, I think that legitimate, when they looked at their list, he was somebody they identified, and I don't know if there's somebody else that they would go for instead of him if they had a choice in that open pocketbook. The other 2 guys, I think, are value pickups that are guys who provide a lot of versatility and really add to the roster, and there's good value. And I say that knowing that there's been some good resources put into those guys too. There's the amount of money that's going around right now in the transfer portal is ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean, that I know is not a Wisconsin comment. Like, honestly, it's a little bit hard to cover or believe at times, just in terms of the overall portal. But no, I mean, I would say at least 2, if not all 3 of those guys were legitimate, very high targets. Boyd, absolutely top of the line. And Justin, I don't know if you got to see, I know you focus more on the football stuff, but had a really, really good conversation with him Monday. I was very, grateful to speak with him. What an impressive person, player. I think he's going to fit in really well. Obviously, likely John Blackwell here, Nolan Winter. Rhodey's interesting, man. So he entered the portal after his freshman year, right, from St. Thomas.
Yep.
And so I was at Iowa State
yeah.
and went to Virginia. And so it was funny because, like, basically I've been kind of tracking this portal stuff with him for years. And I think he's just, in a word, I'll give you two, solid and reliable. I don't think he's going to make a lot of mistakes. He can shoot the heck out of the ball from distance. He can play make. He's improved his defense. And he's got size, Justin. He's a legit.
6'6".
I think he's listed at 6'6", so legit, at least 6'5", 6'5.5", obviously a bare minimum. So I think that's really good. And then Austin Rapp, man, I've watched, not going to say hours, but watched film, live games, talked to his father, and talked to 2 scouts in Australia and New Zealand. And I think he might be the guy that I'm just most intrigued to see within this offense. I think that if he can get a little stronger, a little quicker, he might be a pro type of guy, Justin.
The knock I'll have on him is he's going to have to do some work athletically. I comped him a little bit to Steve Novak, who played at Marquette, but not that level of shooter. Like, from that type of athleticism, that's the type of guy I see. So he's going to have to, if he really refines his stroke and can become a plus shooter, he's got a chance. But the thing I'll say with him is he's got to round out his skill set a little bit. He's a guy who I don't see as an interior scorer.
Not often, yeah.
He can put the ball on the floor a little bit to get by. The biggest thing for him will be is if he can really put some work into increasing his athleticism, it will go miles for him. And I realize he's a true freshman. Really impressive numbers for a guy who's a first year. He's going to get the help here to increase his athletic profile at Wisconsin. And it will be interesting to see what he looks like as a player year 2, because we saw how big of a difference a year made for Winter. I don't think he's quite the level of athlete that Winter is, but they're just different players. Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting to see what he turns into. He's kind of a bigger Robeson in some ways.
Yeah, I kind of see that. I will say his playmaking is a little bit underrated. When I was watching his film, he can pass. He's got good vision. But, I mean, I tend to agree. It's a big jump in terms of conference. So, athleticism and, maybe just speed of the game a little bit even, because it is taking a jump. But, I mean, I would maybe argue that's the most impressive add to me, just because I know some of the schools that were involved, several of those schools have big-time money. And one thing I'm getting the sense with Wisconsin is, they're not lacking. They're being well supported. But I also don't get the sense that they're just going to win these battles because of NIL.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, speaking
they're
with
not going to throw their money around just and win it with a money battle.
Right.
We're going to make sure they're getting value with what they're doing. And it's somebody they
value,
truly
culture, winning, fit. Like, it's been good, man, and it's been exciting. I know that as focused as we are and will be with football, I think it's going to be another fun season at the Kohl Center. I really do.
Yeah, I really like the pieces they brought in so far. And the one knock I've said to Ryan, I'm like, I would like to see. Well, now that Amos is gone, we kind of knew some things there, but it wasn't necessarily like locked in. There were some. I had heard some whispers. I don't know how much you knew about before it happened. I actually think that this is actually potentially a positive and not necessarily. That's not a shot at Amos. I think from a roster construction standpoint, ideally, what I would like to see at that position now, go get yourself a 6'7", 6'8" guy who can either be a real like a Swiss Army knife defender on the perimeter, or a guy who's going to be a plus rebounder, just athlete type rebounder blocker guy. And just a rim runner.
I'll say this. Here's the thing. People have been saying that and then like a rim protector. I'm in agreement with you. If we could put the puzzle pieces like that, I will say those guys are, especially the rim protectors, Justin, can be like an edge rusher in the football portal.
Yep.
Expensive and can be, hard to find. But that said, got to give Wisconsin an A so far in the portal.
Yeah, absolutely. They've killed it so far, and this is what the point I try to make to people when we talk about NIL and Wisconsin. You need to prove that you deserve the money at Wisconsin before people are going to open their pocketbook, and I feel like that's what happened with Greg Gard. He had a really good year. People probably felt like, if this team was a couple pieces away from having a really great season, like in terms of the tournament, but they had a really good season overall in general. And they kind of look at it and it's like, okay, he was this successful during the year. He got that first round win. We give him a couple more pieces. How far away are they from making a real run, in the tournament and being able to have another season comparable to what they had in the regular season? I think that's a legitimate, that's what's going to happen when you get money thrown around. And it's the same thing that's going to happen with Fickell. If he suddenly reels off a 9-win season and looks impressive in doing so, people are suddenly going to look at it and be like, all right, I'm willing to give him a little backing here and let him prove himself, given that he's clearly started to figure some things out.
No, 100%. I agree. I mean, I know we'll get closer to football predictions and stuff, but I like what I'm seeing on both sides of the ball there. Intrigued by the portal so far. And, man, it's a fun time to be talking about Wisconsin athletics, for real.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, with that said, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a day here. We'll let you get back to the rest of your night. You've had a long week. Let you spend some time with the lady. And you have a good night, man. Thanks for stopping by.
Always a pleasure, my dude. We'll make this happen again soon, probably the three of us later this month.
All right. Sounds good, man. Until next time, everybody.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.